Hello and welcome back or welcome to the channel. I'm Loudguns, and over the last week or so we've been having a great time within our community running the new Blockade Runner event. This dynamic event is a perfect mix of combat and logistics, and as ever I really enjoy aspects of the game that encourage people with different interests to team up and complete a mission together. Since the event will be live until the 30th of September, there's still a week to get involved, and I thought this guide might make it easier for people looking to give it a go with the benefits of some of our trial and erroring, and it might hold up for future points in time when CIG rerun this event. So if this sounds good to you, then grab a cup of tea while I roll the intro, then let's get into it. Blockade Runner is essentially the successor to the Ninetales lockdown event, and while that version made us many millions of AUEC, I would argue that this version is a lot more fun. The event is split into two elements, combat and logistics, and while it's more than possible to get along to the event and participate solo by just helping other people out, you ideally want a group working together at the core of it. First up, I'm going to give a breakdown of the event and a few tips that we've picked up, but towards the end of the vid, I'll talk a bit about how we came at it as an org fleet. And if you're keen to get involved with stuff like this, hop on into our Discord using the link down below. There's no pressure to join the org, and we're just happy to give people a proper taste of some multiplayer action in the game. So on rotation, one of the low Earth orbit stations above the 4 major landing zones will come under attack. You'll find the mission in your priority tab within your Mobiglass's contract manager. We're under the impression that the next location after a mission finishes on a server is pretty random, but we can confirm that when a new server spools up, the first location is always going to be Everest Harbour at Hurston. So if you get a server error message that resets a server, or if you're launching in with a party big enough to spool a fresh shard, then head there and set your spawns. While you're in the contract manager, also be sure to pick up a call to arms from the mercenary tab. There's going to be plenty of bad guys to shoot, so you might as well make a bit of extra pocket money while you're at it. For the duration of the event, the defences of the station will be disabled, and NPC pirates will spawn near the station itself. The extent of this force is going to gradually ramp up through the event. Now you can sit at the LEO and kill NPCs here, but keep in mind that until the mission completes, they're just going to keep on coming, so it is a bit of a meat grinder. But throughout the event, you're going to get fresh spawns of Zeta sites dotted around the planetary system that the event's occurring in. These will all be in space, so you don't need to factor any atmospheric battles into your equations. You can quantum to these sites directly, where we will do battle with some NPCs, and hopefully find one or two of them are carrying Zeta cargo that the station requires to end the blockade. The total demand across the server to complete the mission is going to be 1000 SCU, so you'd better get pretty busy. One thing we did find when jumping between these sites was that the map can go a bit janky, and party markers as ever can go awry. Best technique that we found was to have your party lead call out the distance to the next site so that people could easily pick it out and line up with the same one. So keep in mind when you get there that you really want to soft death the main cargo ship of any mission to preserve 100% of the cargo and make it nice and easy for your logistics crews to recover. So make sure that when you're taking it on, you exercise some trigger discipline, and maybe lay off entirely if you've brought a ship that has particularly heavy weaponry. Throughout the mission, the Zeta Sites will scale up in size. The cargo ships will have more cargo on board, but the size of their escort is going to scale up accordingly as well. We think, emphasis on think, that the point at which the sites scale up is connected to the amount of cargo you've brought back to the station. Small sites are going to involve a Cutty Black with just a couple of light fighters and escorts. And after pretty much any delivery, the sites will upgrade to medium, which will then have the potential for freelancers as well as Cutty Blacks, with a slightly enhanced fighter escort that might include some mediums like sabres. We found that freelancers in particular are flimsy as hell once the shields are down, and the line between soft and hard death is really thin. So really, if you've brought something like a Constellation with 4 size 5s, you want to leave soft deathing that to somebody else. We don't know exactly the threshold, but the lowest I saw was around 190 SCU when we started to see large sites appear. Keep in mind that when you see the sites tick over from one level to another, it can make sense to go around and clear some of the existing ones from the level below, since they'll be blocking the spawning of more bigger sites. At large, you're going to see Freelancer Maxes, Caterpillars, and Connie Tauruses, and in our experience, the Cats and the Maxes have been entirely dud for cargo, but the Connies have been a much better success rate. The Escorts ranked up again to include heavy fighters like the Vanguards. And finally, once you tick over around 500 SCU or 50% completion, you'll start to see massive sites spawn. These will be quite punchy in terms of a battle, with the escort fleets including hammerheads alongside numerous support ships and fighters. And the prize ships here with the cargo are the Hull C and the C2. Again, the C2 is the much higher probability than the Hull C, although we have had confirmed sightings of expanded Hull Cs with cargo. Just a quick tip, since I mentioned the expansion, you'll be able to see if a Hull C is expanded or not on your MFD display when you target it. And if it's collapsed in on itself, then there's not going to be any cargo on board because there's nowhere to put it, and that site will be a dud. It's probably not intentional, but it seems that in instances where the ship doesn't have cargo, if you kill it, then the additional NPCs just run away. And this feels a bit like an exploit, to be honest, but it also feels unintentional that so many prize ships are spawning into the game without cargo. So swings and roundabouts in my opinion. If you do have dinner on the table and want to get that last monster haul a bit quicker, then you can always consider electing one party member in a tankier ship to get in and scan the prize ship to see if there's any cargo on board, or if it's something like a Hull C, just visually identify if it has any. Then if it's dud, just simply terminate it with extreme prejudice and you'll be able to move on to the next site quicker. So once you've got a prize ship ideally soft-deathed, you'll want to give it a quick scan to check if there's cargo on board, and if there is, then you'll want to bring a cargo ship of your own in to take the spoils. Anything with a cargo grid will technically work, but keep in mind that ships with cargo on board will pretty much spawn full. So when running it in a group, we've tended to bring C2s or M2s as our main Logi vehicles, since this allows us to shift the most possible, and it's the most convenient for also bringing in an Atlas, which I'll primarily look at with the offloading. If you are solo or you're in a small group and you want to do a bit of everything, then something like the Connie Taurus could be a perfect ship, allowing you to fight and haul to some extent. Just do keep in mind though that you are essentially on a team with all of the people in a server who are trying to do the mission, even if they're not in your party. So if you can't take all the cargo on board a ship in your cargo hold and someone else is trying to get into position with something bigger like a Herc, consider just making way and letting them get on and do it. There's no big payouts connected to actually handing in the cargo, so it's better to just get the job done. And don't worry, I know I mentioned the Atlas, but it's not necessary for this job. And to be fair, for stripping the prize ship of cargo, I didn't find it very useful, since it brute forces things too much. If you're crewing on a Logi ship, my recommendation is to bring both a small multi-tool with a tractor beam and a two-handed max lift. When it comes to the smaller ships like the Freelancers, it can be really useful to have the smaller tool to get the smaller boxes off the top row. The max lift can actually struggle a bit with the small hitbox and end up tractoring the entire ship by accident. However, during the mission you'll come across plenty of 32 SCU and 24 SCU crates, which you wouldn't be able to move without the max lift. When you're working in a group to move cargo, a little bit of patience and communication goes a really long way. There are a number of bugs that stem from two people trying to put their beams onto one box, and at worst you can render it stuck in the supporting state, and nobody will be able to move that box, essentially losing your team and the server that bit of cargo. This can be particularly painful if you screw up a 32 SCU crate. It can help to have one member of the team draw boxes out of the cargo hold of the target ship and bring them to a stop in 0G, and then have another member pulling them on board your cargo ship. Just be sure to talk to each other and pay attention to which box your teammates are moving, just so you don't cause any bugs. And particularly be careful if you're just teaming up with random people and trying to help each other. Zeta is on a timer that starts the moment you remove the crates from the cargo grid of the prize ship. And this will give you about 47 minutes to get that cargo to the station, unload it and send it down the cargo elevator to hand it in. You'll see the timer pop up whenever you tractor beam it. A cool little tip here, with the max lift you only get the time readout if you pick up the box, but with the smaller multi-tool one, you just have to hover over the box, and this allows you to just check on the timers for any crates you've got on the grid already. This is plenty of time if you've got capacity to look for 2, maybe 3 prize ships, depending on how lucky you get and how much combat support you've got. But just keep in mind that you've got to factor that unload in. In the C2, I prefer to really split out cargo into distinct groups based on what ship we got it from, and then I try to load it from the front of the ship, bringing cargo all the way to the back, just so that I know that our oldest stuff is at the back exit. And this way, if we're in a bit of a touch and go situation when we land, we can unload the block first at the back and get it down the elevator, and then take our time with the newer cargo. Also note that the Zeta boxes can go inert if they are shot at all. This is obviously a big risk if you get a whole sea with cargo, but it can also affect the connies quite badly, since if you shoot the bottom, you'll accidentally open the cargo bay, and then if you continue to pound shots into that direction, you can end up shooting some of the cargo. So when going for the connies, if you're trying to soft death them, try and shoot them from the top of the ship, not the bottom. An inert box won't have a timer showing when you tractor beam it, and it won't snap to the cargo grid of your ship, so you're just better off ditching these boxes out into space, since they won't count at hand-in and they'll just take up room. So once you've got your cargo and you're ready to hand it in, it's time to actually run the blockade at the LEO. Set course back to the station and make for the hangars as fast as you can. If you're flying the cargo ship, it can help to pelt it in nav mode as close as you dare, but then make sure you switch over to SEM so you get your shields up in plenty of time before that final 10 kilometers or so. It's better to go slow than eat a bunch of missiles and lasers without shields or countermeasures. If you've got the luxury of mates in more combat-able craft, let them go ahead of you to try and draw off the NPCs, particularly if you've got to the later stages in the day and there are enemy hammerheads just prowling around outside the station. And if you're on the combat side, keep in mind that it's not about you getting X number of confirmed kills, it's about getting the cargo home safely. So listen to or watch out for your cargo pilot if they get into trouble and try and take care or at least draw ships away from them. Once your cargo ship's in the hangar though, you're safe. Now, I was going to save parts of this for my upcoming cargo hauling guide, but now's as good a time as any. I have heard some people say that you can't land a C2 sideways in a large hangar, but you absolutely can. Just take it slow, and there's enough space to turn the ship 90 degrees and land with either the front or the back ramp directly facing a cargo elevator. You'll probably just want to use external cameras to identify any bits of terrain clipping your ship, but it will fit. And taking the little bit of time to land your ship like this will make unloading it many times quicker than if you just fly straight in, since you can just hurl the boxes straight down onto the snapping of the cargo elevator. Now, if you've exercised extremely poor self-control, don't judge me please, and you've paid $40 for the Cargo Empire's DLC, also known as the Argo Atlas, then this can make getting the crates on even quicker. But a couple of max lifts will do the job quite nicely. Then you head to the cargo elevator terminal and just send this down to hand in the cargo for the mission. And remember that if you've got any of those short fuse crates, you don't have to unload your entire hold in order to submit some, and it's better to do a few drops of the elevator and bank all of the cargo than to lose any. Also keep an eye during the mission on the amount of cargo actually required to complete it. Quite often when you get to that final C2, you'll be on 600 to 700 SCU out of the 1000. So don't feel like you need to load and unload the entire 696 cargo off that ship. You can just take enough to complete the mission, then maybe a few extra contingency crates just in case a few go inert on the way. This way you'll just save yourself and everyone else on the server a wee bit of time. When the final cargo is brought back to the station and the total hits 1000, the missions go complete and you'll get a payout. Along with the bonuses that occasionally tick for combat, you'll probably make something like 100k for this mission, so it's by no means going to break the bank, but hopefully you'll find it fun enough that that won't really matter. So just to close things out, I thought it'd be cool to take a quick look over in Starjump's Fleet Viewer at how we approached this at a recent community event, to see what's possible when you get a group working together. We had 40 or so people on this run, and we split into 4 squadrons, roughly of 10 each. Squadron A was charged with holding the LEO for the duration of the event. For one, they got plenty of action and pew-pews, but they also meant that our cargo ships could always head back to the station without fear at any point. Thanks to Skylancer for suffering through 3 hours of hammerhead piloting to give us a great cornerstone of this defense, along with a mixture of fighters and a couple of heavy-hitting Corsairs and Connies. Squadrons B through D were our cargo finders. Each had a prize ship in the form of a Herc, although Raidel of course couldn't miss the opportunity to bring out a pirate caterpillar, along with a mix of combat ships. Generally we had 3 people on the Logi ship, just to make sure that the unloading and loading was that much smoother. Again, it works well on the combat side to include at least one Connie or Corsair to just punch through some of the meatier targets like hammerheads, but you also want a number of fighters, so that you have craft that are better able to handle the NPC light fighters, give you that bit more precision for soft-deathing some of the flimsier cargo ships, and a degree of protection should other players want to adopt a PvP approach to the event. And just on that note, it's obviously perfectly fine and within the rules of the game for people to do that. And as a participant, you should be aware that some people will want to go down that route. So in all likelihood, they're going to be outnumbered by the people wanting to complete the mission, so your best approach is to coordinate and deploy in numbers against them to just take them down. However, please do be aware that hostility marking is notoriously buggy in Star Citizen, and there's every chance that a player who's showing up red is not actually taking any offensive action against you or others doing the event. Just take a second to watch what that person is actually doing and read their intentions before you open up on them. If they're pew-pewing NPCs and not actually taking shots at other players, then chances are either they landed a stray shot on another player, or they're just bugged and showing red. Also, it can be really easy to mistake a player for an NPC in these situations, if they're all red and you haven't learned one simple trick to tell the difference. All NPCs and only NPCs have spaces in their names. They'll have a forename, surname, and sometimes a middle name or nickname. All of these will be separated by open spaces. As players though, we can't put spaces in our name, and our names are either one word like mine, Loud Guns, or people will have put hyphens or underscores in to separate words. So there we have it for the guide to Blockade Runner. If you haven't already, get out there and give it a go. And I hope that these tips will help you get those LEOs restocked a little bit faster. A massive thank you to everyone in FRCN who came along and helped me with this vid. I'd especially like to give one of our lieutenants, Kai Guy, a shout out, both for compiling and sharing a lot of information on the subject, and also for leading so many pickup groups within the server outside of the more formalised events. And please do let me know in the comments how you're finding the event. Is it one you've been getting into back to back, or is it just not really floating your boat? With all that said, I just want to say thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you next time.